Hey everybody, it's Eric Stark with the Smart RVer podcast, and today we're going to be talking about propane tanks and auto changeover regulators and LP lines that go to the tanks. Now this system here is pretty common on travel trailers, and this might look really familiar to you if you have a travel trailer, except for missing the rest of the trailer, right? Well, there's a reason for that. No tongue jack here, that way you can see what we're talking about today. Not saying we'll never use a trailer or a motorhome in our videos, but for our studio it works out really nice for this kind of stuff because we got thousands of parts here in the store and we can just grab what we need at will. So this is ideal. So now let's get into this. So we have the tanks, the lines, the regulator, and of course the mechanism that holds it all down. And just so you know, this system here actually has a line that would potentially go to the RV. So this is the real deal that you're seeing right here. Now let's start with regulators, and let's start with the simple side of this first. Over here, we have this. This is a two-stage regulator, and it has the Acme fitting on this end. This end would have a line that would go down to the RV, okay? This might be mounted like this in your RV. Well, probably not, depending on the tank, the configuration. But technically, this just screws onto the tank. The line goes from here out to the house or the RV. We're just going to call it the house. I think it makes it simpler. Feeds the system so your RV has the furnace and refrigerator and all that good stuff working. Very simple. It has an end vent, which is important. If this is the type of regulator you have on your single tank system, this is what you want to go back with. Now, sometimes they don't have this Acme fitting on it. They have what is called a POL or spud fitting in place of this. I'll get to this a little more in depth in just a moment here, but it might have that. So don't let these confuse you. It's just older, newer. Okay? So let's set that aside now and go to this regulator. Very similar to the one I just showed you. The only big difference is it has an end vent. It still hooks up to a propane tank the same way, whether it's a motorhome or a trailer, or a side vent, a side vent. And this is typically found on motorhomes because the vent would go down in case this regulator would start venting for some reason, too much pressure in the tank, something's building up that pressure. That way, it doesn't go back into the motorhome, or if it's this way into the motorhome, possibly causing a fire or an explosion. It goes down to the ground. It's a safety mechanism. But other than that, it's basically the same. And these are two-stage, so you get a better flow of propane for your appliances, especially the stove and the furnace. The refrigerator's not as critical, but it makes a difference. So this is RV. And a single-stage regulator would look like this, more commonly found on a barbecue. Pretty basic. Now let's get to the auto changeover regulator. So this is a different brand. This is a Camco. This one right here is a Flame King. They do the same thing. They work the same way. They just look a little bit different. Now, one thing you need to know about these regulators, one thing, there's probably a bunch of things, but for this moment right now, one thing. This fitting here screws into the side. Now, most regulators you buy in the aftermarket or even come on RVs, they have this fitting in it. But there are some regulators that don't have this fitting in the side here. This is a 1/4 inch female pipe thread. But there are propane lines with that fitting where you don't need this fitting, the smaller fitting. And it just screws right in there. Now this one happens to be missing the end fitting that go on the tank, which we'll get to that in a second. Like this entire line's defective, but it screws right into the regulator, okay? So some regulators just don't have the small fitting. It's not the end of the world. You just want to make sure you buy the right lines when you're replacing them to make sure you get the fitting right. So this is a 1/4 inch male pipe thread. And this fitting is 1/4 inch male pipe thread, and then this side is an inverted flare. It's 1/4 inch female inverted. So this is the male inverted. Now they're flared, which is nice because you don't need Teflon tape on them when you put them together. You'd have to put Teflon tape on the 1/4 inch pipe thread when it goes into the regulator, but not on the flare. Flare fittings never need Teflon tape or a sealer of any kind. And speaking of Teflon tape, we recommend the Blue Monster stuff. It works great on all types of gas. And now recently in a video I did about propane, well, I did the video a while back, but I just saw the comment. Somebody said that if gas hits propane, it explodes immediately. I'm trying not to laugh because it's ridiculous. Propane's been used in gas applications forever. So if you see that, hear something like that, it's nonsense. They wouldn't make it for gas. It says right on here, gas, natural gas, propane gas, all types of gas. And this stuff works on water, fuel, everything. So this is a great tape. It's extra thick, works very well. 3 wraps at minimum, but use that on all your pipe thread fittings on propane systems. Never go without it. You'll always have problems or the potential for a disaster. So make sure you're using that. Now, let's get into propane lines. On this system here, we see the 2 lines, and hopefully it comes across in the video okay. This line here is a 15-inch line. This line is a 12-inch line. So the 15-inch line has a little bit more of a curve here. So there's not as much stress on it, where this one's a 12-inch line that has a little more stress on it. So what that can do is weaken the end in here, the fitting, the Acme thread fitting, and it can wear out prematurely, but it's going to take a long time, especially with these lines. These lines are ones we make here in-house. Our lines are the best. They're heavy-duty rubber. They have these awesome crimps, an extra long ferrule, so the crimp's longer. These things will last much longer than any line you can buy on the market today. And if you're interested in these, we'll have the link to them in the description of this video. And I bring that up because propane lines are a problem. And let me get into this a little bit. So where's the one? This guy here. You have to excuse me. I got fittings and stuff all over on this table. You can't see it, but it's a mess. The maid hasn't been in lately. So this line here, this fitting would go into there. It should. Now, a customer brought it in this way. This line wasn't very old. I think it was a year or so in age. And so this fitting just blew right out of it. And what's interesting, too, is this fitting on this end, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a gap right in here. There shouldn't be a gap, and this fitting just freely turns in here. So this crimp either loosened up or it was a horrible crimp to begin with. Very dangerous. This is not a good thing. And even with the built-in safety mechanisms of the valves and the regulator, you still don't want your propane line blown apart, especially if you're using propane at that moment. Not good. And also, these lines, I mean, here's a different brand. They look a little bit different, but the quality's not much different. And they fail. They either start leaking at the crimps, which we just discussed, or the lines themselves will get all these cracks and splits and fissures in them along in here, and they start leaking. And sometimes you get one, it might not leak, but if you get one, you're going to get more and more and more, and the potential for leaking is great if it's not already leaking. So these lines are not that great. They're not going to last forever. Now, ones that are built in the United States seem to do better. Ones that are built offshore, like which typically comes on a new RV, no good. Replace them right away. Don't wait. Just like this system here. Made overseas somewhere. This regulator was actually on a massive recall. Thousands and thousands of them had to be recalled. These lines were leaking. The regulators were leaking. Horrible system. You see these online a lot. Looks just like this, right? You buy it just like that. 2 lines. You don't want to do that. You want to stick with mainstream products that are known to work, and that's where you got to trust your local RV store. You want like Camco, Flame King, MB Sturgis. You want quality brand name regulators. You don't want no-name regulators. No-name regulators mean you're going to have problems, leaks, potential for fire, whatever else might come along with a bad propane leak. So keep that in mind. So I'm trying to be nice here, not totally bash all this bad stuff, but it's just a reality. And these wrenches don't come on it. I just put them here so I wouldn't forget to talk about them and show it. So now we're going to get to this system. I think I've covered everything else. Now the wrenches are here just to remind me to say, hey, this is what size this is what size that is. But ultimately, you only need about 4 wrenches to work on your propane system, depending on what brand lines you have and regulator and so forth. So we got a 9/16, 11/16, a 5/8 and a 1/2 inch. Now in this particular system, the 5/8 would go on the regulator if you're going to remove these lines. And you want to hold the 5/8 while you're doing the lines, whether you're loosening it or tightening it, so you don't flex the regulator and also start spinning the fitting inside of here. You want to keep that where it's at, and then just tighten these up. And they don't have to be super tight, just snug, because they're flared fittings. And we're going to check for leaks when we're all done anyways. So very simple. To take one of these off, you're just going to loosen it up. You'd have this side undone first. Make sure your propane's off. And then once it's loose, you can unspin it. Very simple. Then to put it back on, you're reversing the process, right? And then you just tighten it up, and you're good to go. You don't need the wrenches there any longer. So we're going to set them back down, tighten up this propane line or put it back on. And I like this loop in here. And if you have hard plastic covers, when you put them on, it might push this line a little bit, but it's not going to hurt anything. The covers will fit fine. Fits a little bit better with this one, but not much. But it's not enough to worry about. Go with the longer lines if at all possible. Now, this regulator here is set to this tank. And if we look at the regulator itself, see the arrows pointing here, so it's that tank that's going to be on. Now this tank is empty, so it shows red. Not sure if you can see that, but it shows red. Now different regulators might do different things. There's so many out there. Now this particular one, if we put it in the center, it's going to pull off of both tanks if the valves are open. So if one valve's closed, it'll only pull off of one tank. If both valves are open, both tanks. Now if we put it over here, it's going to pull off of this tank. And now let's open up the valve, and we notice that goes to clear. We don't see the red anymore. That's showing that there's propane in the tank. Now this isn't really a gauge. It just tells you whether there's propane or not. It's not going to tell you half full. It'll drop down a little bit, but it's not very accurate. You want to have a separate gauge like a Mopica or something like that. So very simple. So it's going to pull off of this tank. And remember, it's called an auto changeover. So if this tank were to run out, and if this valve was on, as soon as this one goes empty, it automatically switches to this tank and starts pulling from it, which is pretty nice. That way you don't run out of propane in the middle of the night, and you still kind of control that second tank. But you do want to switch this over later on if possible. If you think about it, you might not even realize it. Now, one thing you can do too is, let's say you're running on this tank, and you want to make sure that you don't go to the second tank and run it empty, because maybe you forget to check it, you're not paying attention to it, you don't have a gauge. So you can just turn this one off, and then when this tank runs out of propane, that's it. The RV gets no more propane. Now, if it happens in the middle of the night, you'll have to, if you're running your furnace, you have to get out there and turn this on. Which isn't the end of the world, but it's a safety net, if you will. That way you don't run out of propane. You got it a little more controlled. And be the same if you had in the center. You could leave one tank off and one tank on. Whatever you want to do. So you got some versatility here. None of these might work for you, but you got choices, right? So now what's cool about this too is, if we're on this tank is empty. This valve is all the way open. We got propane that'll come out of it. If I were to pop the cap off this line, we'd have propane coming out. Now, what's nice is that's all the way open. The lever's there. This tank is off. I can disconnect this line. No propane comes out. None whatsoever. So you could actually take this tank out now and go get it filled while this tank's still feeding your RV. So that works out really good. It's a nice feature. That's why the auto changeover regulators are used. They're multi-purpose. It's not just auto changeover. It's things like this. Now, I'm not a big fan of leaving one tank off for very long. So make sure that if you're going to take it off and fill it, that becomes something you do right away. You don't want to leave it sitting there just in case something were to malfunction. You can even err on the side of caution and just turn this tank off too if you're going to be gone for a while. If there's nothing in your RV that really has to have the propane running, maybe it's during the day, the furnace is off, you're plugged into shore power, the refrigerator's running on 110 volts, it might just be better to turn this tank off and go fill this one. Just a safety pointer there. You don't have to do it that way, but it's just a nice way to do it. So you have a lot of versatility with this auto changeover regulator because you have 2 tanks. Now, you guys out there with a travel trailer with 1 tank, don't get all jealous here. Don't think you're missing out on it because you have 1 tank. So it really doesn't matter. You got 1 tank, 1 regulator, 1 line. So if you run out of propane, that sucks. So hopefully you have a spare tank someplace. Because when they do a single tank, quite often there's not room on the front of the trailer for 2 tanks. Or it's a very small trailer and they just assume you don't need 2 tanks. You might even have 5-gallon tanks. 5 gallons. These are 7. These are kind of your standard ones on trailers. Most commonly, newer RVs now are coming with smaller ones. But I think that's just to save money. You know, they cut a few bucks here, a few bucks there. In fact, they're saving money everywhere. Quality, tires, brakes, you name it. We won't get into that. That's a whole nother video for another day, right? So here we have it. I hope I covered everything. Oh, one thing I didn't cover was leak detector, not stop leak. No such thing for stop leak for propanes other than replacing something. So after you put your fittings on, that one didn't want to open up. So this is a spray bottle. In fact, if you buy 2 of our propane lines from us, we throw in one of these bottles of leak detector for free. What a bargain. So now, after you put your propane lines on, you can spray them down with this stuff. Check for leaks. No leaks. The propane's on. It would be bubbling out if there was a leak. This one, well, this tank's empty anyways. Doesn't matter. But there's no bubbles here, and that's what we're checking for. So that works out perfect. Leak-free system. And these little bottles are handy to have, and depending on your trailer, you might have a compartment right up front. You just set it in there, and maybe every time you change your tanks, get propane, you can check for that stuff, because propane leaks don't wait for you. They just come on their own. So keep that in mind. Now I think I've covered it. Propane lines, quality, fittings. We have other videos that break this stuff down as far as the lines and fittings go. This is moreover for these tanks, how they work, the auto changeover regulator, switching back and forth. So this is this tank. Go to center as a recap here. Both tanks, this side, this tank. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully it makes your RVing better so you can enjoy that RV lifestyle. And now you can call yourself a smart RVer. So subscribe to this video if you like it. We don't beg for subscribers, but we certainly like to have them. And also enjoy our podcast. There'll be a link to that in the description as well. So thank you and have an awesome RV adventure.